like to call to order the February 2nd, 2021 Columbia Borough Council work session. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilperson Zink.
Here.
Councilperson Kaufman.
Here.
Councilperson Williams. Here. Councilperson Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilperson Stevens. Councilperson Littner.
Here.
Councilperson Guard.
Here.
Mayor List.
Here.
Please let the record, I was going to say, please let the record show that Howard is showing online. He just must have been on mute.
He's coming.
What?
He's coming. Buckle on mute.
Yep, he's coming. All right. No one from the ministerium, please rise for a moment of silent reflection. Would you like to lead us in pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcement of executive and information sessions. There were none. Before I get to the additions, deletions, and reorganization, I would like to make an announcement that I am acknowledging a resignation effective immediately. I'd like to read it. Dear Council President Zink, Mayor Lutz, Borough Manager Stivers. This is to notify you that I resigned from the Columbia Borough Council effective immediately. As I anticipate spending more time away from Columbia to be near family, I don't feel as though I could be an effective or as hands-on a council person as I want to be. I must tell you that this is not an easy decision. Listening to the Columbia Crossing presentation at the last meeting was so exciting and indicative of the direction in which Columbia is moving. It has been an honor to be part of the vision that honors Columbia's history and also looks forward to take advantage of what the borough has to offer in the 21st century. I've had the opportunity to work with smart and creative counselors and staff. They are good people who honestly consider the best interest of the borough and its residents in their actions and decisions. I've learned a lot about the workings and infrastructure of a borough and have a much more complete understanding of the complexities involved. It takes very many talented and knowledgeable people to keep things running smoothly. They all have my respect. Finally, I am grateful for everyone I've met and for all that I've learned. Thank you. Respectfully, Pamela Williams. With that being said, I do want to announce that anyone interested in serving on Borough Council through January 4th, 2022 is invited to submit a letter of intent to Council President Zink at hzink@columbiapa.net. Interested individuals must be a registered voter in Columbia Borough and have resided here for at least one consecutive year prior to appointment. Letters of intent should include a brief introduction of yourself, something you feel council should include in their goals for 2021, as well as an area you would be interested in serving as a lead. That area does not necessarily have to be a currently defined leadership area. Letters of intent will be accepted through Monday, February 22nd. Applicants should plan to attend the February 23rd council meeting, where public interviews will be held and an appointment made. Any questions can be directed to any current member of council. We'd all be happy to answer any questions you may have. With that being said, Pam, thank you for your service. I realize I've only served with you for a year now, and what a whirlwind year it's been. But thank you for your time and service to the borough.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Heather, do you want to, we need a motion to formally accept that resignation before we move on.
Okay, all right, do we have a second? All right, I have a motion by Councilperson Kaufman and a second by Councilperson Fitzgerald to accept the resignation of Councilperson Williams. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. That carries.
I'll just say this too, if I could vote, I'd struggle with that too. And I know you can't see me, I'm here. I'll say to the publicly what I said to you. It's been an honor to work with you. I've learned a lot. I have the utmost respect for your passion for this community and the energy you brought. I remember my first Parks and Rec Board meeting when we sat around and talked, and the visions that just flew out of that group that materialized. The scavenger hunt through town, the Fitbit challenge, the other things that are coming about were all because of your passion and energy for all the people in this community, and your heart to see them engaged in ways that we all desire to see people do. So I'm very impressed with the energy you brought here, and it's been my honor to be able to work with you during this time.
Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely, thank you.
I just want to say that, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board is an amazing group of people who are the idea people and the implementation people, and my respect goes to that group of people too.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So Pam, when are you back up in town?
I don't know.
Okay.
Um,
Well, when you know, I don't put you on the spot here. Just let us know when you're back up in town. I'd like to in person say goodbye and talk a bit. We'll change. We'll get
absolutely.
do the busy work part of that task. But just let us know when you're back in town.
Thank you, I will.
Good.
Thank you, Pam.
Say hi to Delray for me. Go out to eat someplace nice.
It's freezing here.
It's below 70.
I'm sweating. Now, look, 60. I know, I don't mean to do that, but.
You have to.
So, I have to. Yeah, so, thank you all, and, it's been a pleasure and an honor to serve with you and every other former council member that I have served with, and, this has been experience. It's way outside my wheelhouse, but at the same time, I'm so glad to have this experience. And if any good came from it, all the better. So thank you all.
Are there any additions, deletions, or reorganization of the agenda needed?
So ma'am, I'll just jump in quick. You're more than welcome as a citizen to join in. If you want to watch this way or drop off, you're welcome to do either way. But your official role is now complete here, having accepted the resignation.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to drop off.
All right. Take care, Pam. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
I don't know if this is an addition to the agenda or not, but I know that Mark had sent an email out earlier today about forms for the WGAL lists of emergency notice. The words are escaping me right now, please forgive me. As well as the updating of the emergency snow route map. Is that something that would be discussed at a work session, or is that just something we go ahead and direct?
So the first
We
one.
could add that as item 8B. discussion on snow emergency?
We can, procedurally, I mean, getting the contact information is more just an operational piece, so that they ask for your username and code word when you dial in, so they know that it's someone officially with the borough. So it's just getting that set up, and amongst us, you and me, Todd, we'll talk about who gets that contact as communications head. And I would think that it's appropriate for the mayor to announce, under his comments, he can announce the removal of the snow emergency.
I'm talking specifically about the duplicity and routes, and there's 2 different maps apparently.
Oh, and getting the snow emergency stuff, we'll talk a little bit of that today, as part of the agenda item, looking at the snow emergency routes and getting that cleaned out. We can discuss it
I don't know if that's an addition or anything.
No? Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? I have a motion by Councilperson Kaufman, second by Councilperson Brigard to approve the agenda as advertised. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Mayor Lutz, you're up.
Okay, I'll probably be prefacing your next item with my comments, so it may be a good meeting for you. But anyhow, I received a letter, an email the other day from Susquehanna Valley EMS thanking the borough, and especially the Borough Public Works Department for the, you may have all gotten that letter too, thanking the Public Works Department for the work that they did during the last snowstorm and then again this snowstorm. The last snowstorm, we said we would not ticket folks on the snow emergency route, but we asked them to move. It didn't work. It hasn't worked. So when the snow emergency was declared this time, and albeit it was a several day duration of snow, we decided that we would take some action. This paper was put on every windshield, on every vehicle along the snow emergency route that was still sitting there, and they were asked to relocate immediately. Then the borough went around and we agreed that we would not tow vehicles, but we would ticket them. The only way we can ensure that Susquehanna Valley EMS, our fire service, or any other emergency service can negotiate around this town is if we're able to clear the snow. And I don't know how much stock you put on having to shovel out or move a car versus a human life. And the safety of our residents is our primary function here in the borough and as borough administrators. So we tried to be nice. It didn't work. This time we got a little stronger, and we will continue. With that, we realize that there is a problem, and we'll probably talk about that more here very shortly. We realize that there is a problem. Well, there are several problems. One, the ordinance was written back in 2004. And if you go into general code, it's a mess. And what happened back then was right around a little after that time, the borough contracted with general codes to update the code book. General codes took the literary license to do some editing and some changing of our ordinances. So when you get into some of them and you start reading them, and I think we're finding these, we found these for the last couple of years, and we're finding them still, that these ordinances or these pieces in general in our code book don't quite match the ordinance. There was a time when we recognized that this was a real problem, and rather than go back and recodify the whole code book, we thought we would work through it. And actually, like I said, we're still finding some of those problems. At one time, to try to stave off that, the borough decided to post the ordinance in general codes right in front, I believe it is, of the section that's in the code book. And you'll see in the code book some of the ordinance posted or actually printed with the code. I pulled out the ordinance, it's June 14th, 2004. Chief Brommer and I went over it, had discussions with Mark, had discussions with Jake. There are some changes that need to be made. This is going on 17-year-old ordinance. This is the first time in my knowledge that there was a snow emergency ordinance. As a matter of fact, I wrote this ordinance. There are some things that need to be changed, as usual. These are living documents. Times change, things change, and we need to update this, and we need to tighten it up a little bit. We can talk a little bit about the map, but the streets in here, at the time these streets were put in, they were put in prior to the relocation of 441 and the turnback of Kinderhook Road, or not Kinderhook Road, Ironville Pike. So, and 9th Street. 9th Street, Ironville Pike, and 3rd Street were state roads. And so was Locust Street from 3rd down to Front. So some of those were put in there basically because we knew the state would take care of them rather than borough personnel. Well, when you look at that list, it can be changed, it needs to be changed and updated. Also, there was a period of time several years ago where council agreed to add Chestnut Street from 9th to 5th on the snow emergency, and it never showed up. There was never an ordinance change. So that's probably the reason for the two maps we're seeing. One would be the correct map according to the ordinance. The other would be a map that basically was done according to the last discussion on the snow emergency route, but was never formally updated. So there are some problems with this. I believe that we can go through this ordinance with Mark and the chief and Jake and make some of the changes. There are not a lot of changes. Just some cleaning up needs to be done, especially the snow emergency routes. Now, with that, a lot of discussion with Jake and the chief the last couple of days about this ordinance and the snow emergency routes. We recognize, I'll do the easy ones first, we recognize that Ironville Pike and Kinderhook Road, there's no parking on them roads. So you can make them, and they are, snow emergency routes, and the parking isn't affected on those two roads. We also recognize that, according to the chief and Jake, and I agree, that there's no need to do this Chestnut Street snow emergency route. What we looked at was Locust from Front to 5th, 9th Street through its entirety from 462 to Ironville Pike, and then obviously Ironville Pike and Kinderhook Road. Amen. Kind of short and sweet. We also looked at and talked about this. We talked about this several times now in the past that I've been around here. And this was talked about when the original ordinance was crafted. That because of the parking situation in Columbia Borough, we should look at a snow emergency route and designate parking or no parking, let me say, on an A or a B side of the street. And underneath the snow emergency sign, it would have A or B. When the snow emergency is done, in that emergency, you would say no parking on the A side or the odd side, whatever. But A and B is short and sweet rather than adding text to it. Okay? So there's no parking. And then later on, as we're doing today and tomorrow and probably the rest of the week, we will notify residents that now we're going to switch to the B side. or vice versa, whatever it may be. That allows people living along those roads to move over, not have to get over on another street or whatever have you, take someone else's parking area. It takes some of the pressure off, gets the job done. Now, it takes 4 hours for our highway crew of 8 men, that's if we have 8, to do the streets in Columbia one time. So when you have an event like we just had the last couple of days, figure how many 4 hours you have to get out there. And I think Jake said 6 or 7 times they hit the streets over this last event. That wears on the guys. They put a lot of hours in, and when you're driving, whether it's the plow truck or a snow blower, you got to concentrate constantly because there are obstacles, there's traffic, there are pedestrians and everything else that you have to deal with. So it may not be physical taxing on you sitting in the truck plowing, but mental taxing is really great. And to add that stress onto those guys is kind of undue. So this will give us a little time to do that, where they can do one side, clean it up, residents can move back over, and then the other, and then we get in there and do the other side. Everybody seems to like it. I hope council likes that thought, and we'd like to do some tweaking and put that together. So things were a little messed up. We realize that. I will say, I can't believe that when I looked out my door Monday morning, I saw black streets. And if you drove around Columbia today, I finally got out late in the morning. Our streets were basically wet, and now they're dry. I have the utmost gratitude for those guys for the hours they put in and the job they did. And now, just like in the ordinance, for the rest of the week, Jake will be coordinating with the chief, and they'll be clearing different areas of town. When they do that, the residents will be notified. Hey, we're going to clean your street and you move your vehicle. Today we did 3rd Street from Cedar into Locust. The police officers, code enforcement officers, everybody started knocking on doors and people were moving their vehicles. Matter of fact, when that snow blower runs, people hear it, they get out and they move their vehicle. Okay, it went real well. It didn't take much time at all for them to go from Cedar. I know on the, I'll say the east side, to go from Cedar to Locust, it didn't take them long at all with that snow blower. So we can really make tracks if people don't have vehicles there. And they kept 2 trucks running pretty doggone hard. So that's what's going to happen the rest of the week, is people may be contacted, you may get your door knocked on, you may get something by way of social media or website and whatever have you, any way we can, saying, like, tomorrow we're going to do such and such street. And now I do know that Jake's going to concentrate on corners, so that we have that sight distance, and we also have storm drains on those corners. And it's supposed to go up around 40 tomorrow, and the next day or two, supposed to be some mild weather, and we're going to get some snow melt. And we don't want to get any residential flooding or flooding on our streets because the storm drains are covered with snow. So I know they're going to hit those corners. So I want to personally thank the guys. I want to thank the community for bearing with us. This has been a real high event. I don't know if I can think back where we had snow for this long of a duration in recent history. And for 8 guys to do what they did, I think it's phenomenal. But bear with us. We're going to get better at this. We're going to get serious about this. And we're going to keep the residents in mind. We're going to do what's best for the residents, even though there may be some inconvenience. And with that, Madam President, I guess you want to continue on.
All right. That's good if we're going to talk about this, because I had a question then about that.
Sure.
The snow emergency, if we're redefining the area. All right. Next, we're on to the discussion on public parking. The reason I wanted this to be our work for tonight is because, you know, as everyone knows, the other half of the RACP grant was meant for parking improvements. And at this point, we have not done anything or really planned anything out. And so it's time to roll up our sleeves and really think about this and what improvements we want to do. We had the parking study done to tell us, you know, where parking was needed or not needed, and things, and it's time we set our goals and get to work on this. So, that being said, I think one of the first things that, and we all agreed on this, is the need to update our parking meter situation and what that looks like. I don't know, Mark, have you gotten any information for us on the different, like, where we can go? I don't quite know what to do here. I'm sort of blind.
That was the second recommendation out of the Walker study. The first one was actually signage and wayfinding, and I think we're on a way to get that in place and really talk about wayfinding signs throughout the community and how to direct people to areas of public parking. We've done some immediate improvements by removing the sign along Third that directed people to the Central Relief lot as public parking. It's not a public lot, those are spaces that we lease out. But we did move that sign, or it's being moved to direct people to the Locust Street lot, Locust in front. So we're trying to get some of the signage improved, but we'll get the wayfinding program up and running together. The second big piece of that, which is what you're leading into, is which software are we going to use to utilize and a phone app, if you will, or an application that would allow people to pay for parking off of a credit card and come in and designate a space. And there's many out there. Chief is going to be here tonight. I'm sure he's tied up. His recommendation is to use the same program that, the Lancaster City uses. And so we're going to get some prices on that and what equipment that's going to cost us to buy and look at. And because they already use it, some other boroughs around here use it, it gives us a partner to help troubleshoot and get in and get set up. But what this app does and why we like it is a hybrid system. If somebody wants to pull up to a meter on the street and they want to put quarters in, they can. If they want to use the app, there's a number, and all we got to do is add stickers to all of the meter heads. And you just put that number into the app, and that app then knows, oh, that person's is right there. And then between the license plate readers that we have and just a license plate scanner that the parking people would carry with them, they'll go through and scan license plates and see, hey, is this person, have they paid? And if so, what's their time? And so and they'll also get an alert saying, time is up on this one, and they can go check it. So it's going to be a learning curve and a training for the parking enforcement team to learn how to do this. But almost all cities now that have paid parking downtowns on their main streets are going this way because it's a great convenience. I love it. I've used it in many different cities. When I go see my daughters in Philly when we were down in Florida. And you get a notice, it says, you have 15 minutes left on your time. You want to add to it. You're sitting there, you're having a good time, your dinner's still going, you realize you want to go somewhere else, you want to get out of coffee cream and get ice cream after dinner. And you simply, put another hour on it. And it doesn't cost you that much to add an hour to your credit card and go down and keep people in town longer, keep them engaged, and let's be honest, it keeps them spending money in our downtown, which is one of the goals we have of doing that. So we're going to put together the whole proposal, figure out what it's going to cost in detail, and bring that forward soon.
How many parking meters do we actually have?
I knew somebody's going to ask that, and I'll get with Jake. I don't know. It might be as
20 something.
I'm sorry.
I think it's 120 something, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Don't hold me to that.
No,
For some reason, that number popped in my mind, so I must have heard that somewhere along
I know in Lancaster City, I mean, the only place I've used it down there is when I go to pick up when I have to go into the voter office to pick up my supplies and stuff. But down there, like, it's not, the spaces aren't numbered or anything. I put in my license plate number into the thing. Just thinking, I mean, if we do away with, if we're going to go with a kiosk system, I would like to see the meters themselves removed to prevent confusion. And the least we have to do to put that, I mean, I don't really want to have to go and number every space, and that would just be more, I'm just thinking out loud here, that would be more we would have to maintain to make sure those numbers are visible and everything else.
It's just a sticker on the meter heads, the way they do that. So you walk around the back like you're gonna pull up the meter, and you simply put that meter number in your phone, or you simply put your license plate in and register your car, and license plate reader reads that that car is paid up to $230.
Yeah, one of the, like Mark said, the chief was talking about some programs. One of the nice things about the meters, and you kind of hit on it over there, the meters define the spaces.
Right.
So you don't have to paint or anything like that. And as Mark said, then there's a sticker on the meter. The other issue that I'm sure we would hear is that we should have a hybrid model where you can still slug it with quarters or whatever have you, because many people don't carry a cell phone or have that access. They're still in the slugging the meter, so that way would help. I really think that we should pull out the whole borough should pull out the parking study and do a refresher on it in a spare time. I know that there has been quite a bit of discussion about a parking facility, and we kind of, with COVID, we kind of stalled out on that. I would suggest that you resurrect that. And the other thing is, this was brought up in the parking study. There is a lot of parking in Columbia Borough, especially in the downtown, in the rear of the buildings. And my suggestion to y'all would be that the borough get with the Merchants Association. There's the first, you can go and knock and go and visit every business, or you can go to a meeting of, let's say, 75% of them and have this discussion, and it's a lot quicker, and you get some brainstorming out of it. But meet with the Merchants Association and have a discussion on parking and see if there isn't some kind of co-op that can be formed. And then the other thing that we looked at was the church lots. One time we had talked to the Methodist church up there on the highway. They have 2 parking lots. And we talked to them about putting meters in and working a co-op deal, like a public-private partnership. Their thoughts were, well, the funeral home uses it, and we have possibly weddings, funerals, those kind of activities there also. But I'm sure that those things aren't insurmountable. You can bag meters, you can put off a section or whatever have you. But we have other churches, Our Lady of the Angels, Holy Trinity, St. Peter's. I saw them out in St. Peter's today. They don't have a school there. So, and I do see some residents probably are allowed to park there, we don't pay anything. But I think we can work some deals out and parking areas we already have. One thing I don't think we really want to do is start tearing down buildings to put parking. I heard one time, Mark probably knows better, But I heard one time, to create a parking space, it cost over $10,000. But I imagine that parking space may be around 20.
So they say it's around 6,000 to pave space, a structured parking space, the structured parking is around
To pave it,
38,000
not 38,000.
for structured parking, so the price goes up really quick when you start putting in structured parking.
That's why I think we gotta look at what we have.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that parking study was pretty much, there was no question that it said a structure was not in any way recommended. And even the Yulee study said,
But remember now, that was prior to this over here being sold. And the.
but the
kickback
Yulee
was-
study was about that,
It was about that.
and it also, with the hotel was already in progress, was already in the works. Because the Yulee study said the only person that would benefit from a parking garage is the owner of that hotel.
I don't, that's where we disagree. You know, we didn't get, that study wasn't given rave reviews. There was some good information in it.
Mm-hmm.
Parking, the study also showed there's a lot of parking issues uptown.
Right.
A lot of the row homes, Walnut, Chestnut, 700 block, 800 block, not 800, but 700 block, 600 block, Walnut, all that congested area up there. I think I mentioned at one of the meetings prior an idea, I don't even know if this is part of this discussion or not, or if it can be included into this rack fee conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can, because with the rack fee, I mean, that's parking improvement. I mean, some of it has to be done, I mean, I'm sure they're gonna wanna see most of it being down here, but,
I know the folks at 800 block of Walnut down, all Walnut is just atrocious.
Mhm.
You know, I think I had mentioned at one time, what if we could, the borough could, partner with a reputable construction company or firm or paving firm, and have an agreement signed where we can get economy of scale, and whoever would want to have maybe a parking lot put in the back of their property, to get one or two cars off the street, they get a discounted price. I'm not saying the borough has to pay for anything, but maybe the borough can help negotiate an economy of scales deal with a reputable company that can help the folks in these congested areas, maybe throughout the entire town, whoever would want it. That might be helpful as well.
Take that a step further. When we did, here's an example, when we did 462, the state said we're gonna pay 462, and we had about 2 months to react to it. We said, oh my God, we have storm drains, we have curbs, sidewalk and everything, what are we gonna do? The borough set up a program, I think it still shows up, some of them still show up on your financial reports. But the borough said, we're gonna put curb and sidewalk along that cartway. We're gonna assess you so much per foot for curb, so much per foot for sidewalk. We will contract it, have it done, you'll get the economy of scale. If you choose to, you can have up to 5 years, no interest, to pay it off.
With the construction company.
Well, no, the borough leaned the company, the properties.
Well,
and then
we would invoice them for a period of time,
Yeah.
say that you have 5 years to pay it off, if after those 5 years you don't pay it, then it becomes a delinquent.
And that worked out real good. Obviously, there was a couple that night. There was several people along that cartway that said, no, I don't want to do it, I'll do it myself. Every one of them came back and said, I can't beat your price, go ahead and do it.
With the mobilization cost for doing that, you can't.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't even like giving people in that situation, obviously this is just kind of out there, but I don't like giving people that option, because then you end up with inconsistencies. right? You end up with maybe one concrete company did this, or, you know, maybe they didn't put like a rebar in or something like that, and then you end up with real issues with inconsistencies as far as, you know, you have one block that looks like this and the next house looks something different, so. But yeah, that's certainly something that, those mobilization costs are what gets you with those large construction projects, so if you can do that one time, it certainly would help.
And we even went as far as to allow those that had curb cuts. If you wanted a 6-inch apron, 6 inches deep or 8 inches deep, depending upon the traffic that went across into your lot, that was figured in. So it was one of the best programs that I've seen the borough do in a long time. That worked out really well. And if you look at it today, it still looks pretty good.
Is that something we can consider for this issue?
I think it's a great idea. I think the only way to really attack this logically is almost break the borough up into chunks and say, let's focus here first and maybe target some of the hot spots that we know are problem areas and see if we can, you know, utilize, we have a beautiful alley structure here in the borough. Let's get that reactivated and try to utilize some of the rear lots where it's feasible still to do so. I think we can gain a lot of parking.
Over between Perry and Union, 3rd to 2nd, in that quadrant, there's a large piece of property, but it's owned by several people. There's a piece of property in there, very underutilized. The Lancaster Redevelopment Authority did a drawing, did all the work, they drew it all up and all, and we went and asked all the residents if they'd like everyone that was affected in that quadrant agreed to it but one, and I shot it down. And from that day on, we've received complaints about parking. And matter of fact, talked with Matthew Sternberg not too long ago, and he said, I still have those plans. I think that could possibly be resurrected in that area. And you talk about jam, that's jammed up down there. But that could be duplicated at other places around. You know, I was up in Sealings Grove a few years ago, and they have what they call pocket parks, parking lots, where there's a piece of ground. It may hold 4 cars, it may hold 6 cars, but they're not on the street. In other words, they didn't take a corner and put a hole in the streetscape or anything like that. They're in these little areas where they put what they call pocket parking, and they have wayfinding signs. You go down the main street, and there's a sign. Go back there. You go back there. There's 4 parking spaces. 6 parking.
A short time ago, Mary Wickenheiser said that she was going to take a group of people walking through the alleys to look specifically for areas where there could be parking. And I know of a few, but they are rentals, so I don't know what the incentive would look like you were talking about, to get them interested in, because, you know, some specific buildings that I'm thinking of have maybe 6 cars to 1 home.
Right.
And if we could get even some of those off the street, and where it's level and feasible, they don't even have a fence, I think that should be really looked at, because, and some of the private alleys I think are a barrier, because, you know, 3 homes could easily get off-street parking, but people have kind of privately taken them over, and so we've lost that ability for people to park behind their home.
You know, Sharon, you could say you had a piece of property in your backyard, not a large, and you wanted to get involved in this, but you didn't need all the parking spaces that you actually could create. You could lease them to one of your neighbors.
So that would be permissible, because I didn't even know if that was.
It's your property. You can do with your property what you want.
Well, yeah, and that would work for some of these places that I see, because the yard is large enough, and there's not an issue with getting from the yard to the alley itself. It's not like a big, you know, ramp or hill.
You come on this, I have that second parcel that I use nothing, it's all for parking at my shed. My shed.
There's great opportunity there, and it's not gonna be every parcel, every alley, but I think we will gain some economy of scale, and I think you're right, if we put it out to bid and get some competitive bids, and maybe each year we rebid it, or we give somebody a 3-year contract or something, we'll find a creative way to do that. And they know they have the steady work and start targeting which alleys we're gonna do and work together with them. I think this falls in well, Eric, with our neighborhood plans, and you know, get these neighborhoods defined and see which neighborhoods have the parking issues, and we'll start targeting them and make this a 5-year plan to start looking at how to help solve this. I think it's a great way to go.
You know, the borough has a piece of property, this was talked about, I don't know if this was in the study or not. We're on Stump Avenue. The borough owns a piece of property, we want to put a parking lot in there, we want to put a little playground in there or something, but, you know, there's a piece of property, and we even looked at buying the other piece of property adjacent. And that would be some interior parking there in that Union to Cherry Street area, 3rd Street to 4th Street. Another area that could use some relief. You know, there are a lot of these places around.
On the map, it says right here.
Yeah.
This little piece is the one that we own.
So a small piece like
Yeah.
that, if you were to use asphalt and make some spaces, could some of the RACP money be used to cover something like that?
If we tie it together with parking and we define the RACP grant fairly broadly, I think we would be able to, yes. We would just have to come up with one complete program of what we want to spend the money on. And we're talking about $1.7 million. We'll get the final numbers when we get the final expenses from all the contractors there. But we have about, I'll say $887,000 left in the RACP money, and we have the 50% match. So we'll match that with us, and that's what we have to spend on our parking program. So we'll look at the cost of the parking program, we'll put some of that in some of the wayfinding signs. And the rest, I think we look at putting it into this program, and we have 2 to 3 years to spend that money. So this would be to kick off this program. As long as we package it all together as one plan, I think we'll be able to do that.
So if you have a lot, like you're showing up there, a small area, how much did it cost you, when we did Commerce Street, that small, now I know there was a land purchase, I think, involved in that too, because that house, I think, sold some of that land, but that really looks nice there, and it needs several spaces.
So the advantage of the Commerce Street parking lot is Jake and his crew were the ones able to pay that. So Derek with land studies came in and they designed it, and it was very easy to get the paving done then because our crews can come in and we paid for material.
Okay.
And our
But
hourly rate.
I don't remember how much that ended up costing.
No, I'll ask.
And they put some nice lights in there and all, I mean, it does look nice.
It looks really good, and we've talked about the fact that maybe you want to expand that a little bit, use a little more rotary park down here to add some more parking there. So these are all things, concepts to run around. I think that in that neighborhood there, that's definitely an area we can add some parking to.
Well, and I mean, all over town, those kind of lots would be great if we could have just those smaller lighted lots like the Commerce Street lot.
And take up 10 spaces, that makes a big difference in a block.
Okay. Mark, go back to that, Stump Avenue property.
Who owns Stump Avenue property?
We do.
We do,
That's
let's take
that's
it
why I
from
want
one
to go
that's,
back to it.
so this is Borough Hall right here.
Jesus, I can't even see when you're out that far.
So we are, Mayor, where am I? It's way up. Is it down farther?
Is that what street's that?
Down,
Straight in here.
yeah.
Yeah, it's right in this stretch.
It's that piece right there. Now, this is all
Yes,
owned,
this is it.
if I remember correct, this is all owned by the same person. And there was a trailer where you can see the building. And the discussion was to buy all that property, that whole piece, that whole
Yeah.
rectangle there. And you can probably put 30 cars in there.
Yeah.
Make a difference in the neighborhood, you bet.
Well, and it would help with snow emergency too, having somewhere to.
You
get
have
off
more,
the street.
yeah, so this is the piece that we own, it's not showing us, as us owning it now, this might have not been updated recently, but this is the piece that we own. These pieces are underutilized right now, or not really utilized for housing. So to concentrate some parking right here, which would right in our downtown area would be a fantastic find.
Can we do permit only parking as well? Then the borough generates that revenue. You know, you get a parking tag that you pay for your space, number 22, and it's yours, and, can we do something like that?
You mean in the lots or all?
Yeah, like have a lot, right, and then have permit only parking, so if a resident wanted a space all their own, it could be theirs, and they pay $50 a month for it or something, whatever they're doing right at the spot.
You can, it'd be leased, it'd almost be like the CenturyLink lot concept where instead of us leasing it and then subleasing, we own it outright, fee simple, we would just lease out spaces. Again, you can number the spaces, you can do it by permit parking, and they have to have it like staff does, you have to have a little hanger in your rearview mirror. Any of those things are possible. We just want to make sure we don't get too many programs going all at the same time because it adds to staff to maintain it. You don't want to get ahead of your resources to do it well. So I think this is a time, and this year we told the state that we would spend spring, summer, into fall, putting together a really solid program of how to spend the rest of that RAC fee money so that we can start spending it in 22. So I think this gives us time to really talk through it, work through it with the Public Works team, and get, like you said, maybe get a small committee together to look at with the impact of businesses and residences and get some input from our people here, and let's come up with a good program that's going to work. We have the time to do it and do it right.
Walked in the office today, you mentioned permit parking, and staff just received a kind of unpleasant phone call from a resident that has a handicap parking space, and someone with another handicap likely parked in that space. Probably add it, insult to injury. With the snowfall, they just shovel that space out, and next thing you know, someone else parked in there, which they can do. We talked for years about doing away with all handicap parking and doing permit parking. And then Mark and I talked, and you can do handicap, but designated.
You can, yeah.
But either way, so you talk about permit parking. A lot of the people, I guess over on that Perry Street area, they talked about that. They said, could you do permit parking in our block? Because it's so congested, it's a one-way street, it's a narrow street. Could you do permit parking that each homeowner, for example, gets assigned a parking space, whatever have you. You got a 14-foot house and a 20-foot car. It doesn't take long to know that you got a parking issue. And then if you got 2 cars and 3 cars, you really got a parking issue. And that's what's happening around here. The one house over there is 12 foot wide. So, and many of these homes in our downtown area are about 14 feet wide. 14 to 16 feet wide. That creates a problem.
Well, why couldn't you take that concept and try it with a block, but paint the spaces with the door number to coincide with the address, and then if they have a second car, then charge them the permit to be able to park it in the neighborhood. I don't know how that would work.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think you're on the right track. I believe start here, see how it works. If there's interest and you get it refined, move to this area, move to this area. I can guarantee you, if you did that, for example, in any block in town, if you did that in any block in town, before the paint's dry, someone else is going to be asking for it in their block.
I mean, one thing these are things that we did ask the parking study people about. And they cautioned against painting for spaces because they said you actually lose spaces that way.
Well, I can tell you, in front of my mother's house on 5th Street, you're not going to lose any spaces over there.
And right, but other places in town, not every block is as congested as that. And they also cautioned against doing the permit parking because to solve it on one block by doing permit parking has the potential to create bigger problems on the next block or, within a several block area there, because then you've driven everyone off of that block.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we should just keep that in mind also, that,
I think you're right, Ed. I think you gotta look at all of it, but I do believe that you need to do something with your handicap. Because one of the biggest complaints we get in the parking area is, I paid $100 for this parking space and someone's in my parking space. Do they have a handicap placard? Yes.
So just so, I think, Mark and I have talked about
Yes.
this in the past, yes, but the law in Pennsylvania changed in 2017. You can assign a handicap space to they say identifying information. I don't think it means to a specific address, but you can do it to a specific car, or something like that, exactly, a placard number, whatever. So that is something that is allowable now. In the past, you could not do that. In the past, it was what's in your borough code now, which basically says that anyone with a handicap placard can park in any handicap space. And obviously, you're right, that does create a lot of issues, because people expect those spaces out in front of their house to be there for them, and that's why you gave them a handicap spot, so they could park right there. But yes, that is something that's allowable at this time that you could do if you wanted to make that change.
Now, Evan, that would have to be marked somehow that other people would see it and parking enforcement or a police officer could see it.
Absolutely.
See that the correct vehicle is in the correct spot.
Exactly, yeah, so you would have to essentially do some type of custom handicap sign to give someone notice that, hey, this spot is only for license plate number ABC 1234, something like that.
And would that be advertised that we were making a change like that, like an ordinance change?
It would, yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's how it has to be, that's how it's gotta be done, yeah, absolutely. You would advertise that as an ordinance that does, say, we're now going to be assigning handicap spots, so if you are a handicap, if you have a handicap placard, make sure that you are in kind of a general spot if you're not in the spot that you would apply for if you don't, so.
The way I've seen it done is you have your generic handicap parking sign that you buy in bulk. You can have a number of them. These have a small panel that goes below it, and it has their either plate number or placard number for on that smaller piece on the same post. Then you can change them out and take them out, and you don't have to waste the whole parking sign on that. You're just changing out the smaller one, and again, I feel for them, because I can't imagine paying money for a parking spot right in front of your house, and someone else can legally park right in front of it. And the perception is that maybe your handicap is more severe than theirs. They are legally allowed to have it per the doctor's note, but if your limitations are greater in your perception and reality of theirs, it's extremely frustrating. You pay for something you can't use. Why do you have to spend $100 on something that you'll use 24% of the year? So I think this would be a great service to our residents to just go ahead and put that piece in place now. It's not going to be a hard work for us to do that.
And you really rub salt into their wound.
Oh, yeah.
When you shovel it out,
mhm,
and someone else parks it.
mhm.
I mean, you can try to get Bernie Sanders to sit there in your spot if you want. He's pretty busy right now traveling the world. Cover all of them.
Naming it up.
Those are the best memes. I crack at her when I see him. He's been all over the place. He was down at the crossings. I don't know if you saw that one. He's sitting in one of the rocking chairs at the crossing. That's good stuff.
I'm not sure I agree with that. Allow people to have their personalized parking spot. Handicap spot.
Or just in general, non-handicap.
Well, handicap and in general. Now, I would like a personal spot in front of my house.
Sure.
You have an idea.
In fact, I prefer you buy my neighbor's house and put it in a parking lot for my price. I think we're getting a little kind of lenient. I do, I'm sorry.
Well,
I
like a grain store area.
The parking study came back and said we did not need additional parking. I understand there's locations throughout the borough that it's difficult. But you can't take one neighborhood
Right.
and give them extra parking and tell the other neighborhood is paying taxes too, that you're not getting additional parking. And I don't believe in that. I believe what we do for the community is for the community, not for one individual neighborhood. I am sorry that certain neighborhoods have more parking problems. Maybe if demand was high enough, an investor would buy a property and build a parking lot and charge them. But it's not the borough's responsibility to provide additional parking for residents in the borough because they prefer not to walk a block. So, you know, I'm in the same boat. I live on a one-way street. I deal with parking issues all the time. You know, we questioned when we had the people here for the parking study about permanent parking. Problem with permanent parking, it actually makes it worse because they set up districts.
Mm-hmm.
So now you could end up, instead of parking in front of your house on a normal basis, you may have to park a block away because you fall within that district and walk to your house. I'm against that too.
I see what you're saying, Eric, but what about us paying, what about the taxpayers have to pay for the parking that we're gonna be putting in over town for the businesses so that they have, the people that come into town have places to park so that they can support the business? Why would you not want to help support the residents that are living here all the time and paying taxes to make their life a little easier too?
Hold on a second. I'm not trying to say what you're saying.
Well, we're gonna be paying for parking, additional parking over town somehow, whether it's a structure or what it is.
I thought we already concluded through the study that there wasn't additional parking necessary.
Well, we have how much money we're spending on parking then as a back fee.
So
We have
parking,
it to spend. It doesn't mean we have to spend all that.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing said that we're
If
spending
we were
all
going to
this
put
money.
a structure somewhere, let's say in the middle of Lucky Street, we're gonna build a 2-3-story structure. Yes, that would benefit the businesses, and that's who should be paying the majority of the taxes, but also any resident could park there.
Well, that's true, but it's not gonna be too convenient to their house.
It's not
Can I
gonna
say
be,
something?
Oh,
sure.
I guess so.
Can I say something? Can I say something?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Lewis, I remember a long time ago, you talked about people that had extra vehicles, whatever, put in parking spots behind their house.
Yes.
And that is a great idea, and I did it. And working around town, I can see a lot of properties where people can just put parking spaces behind their house. Now, if you have 2 or 3 cars, instead of parking up the whole street, I would put my own parking spot behind the house if I could afford it. But I don't know if there's an answer to this. You know what I mean? When you have all these properties with 2, 3, and 4 vehicles, not only that, plus the rentals, okay, and there is a borough code on how many vehicles can sit in a certain space, right?
yeah,
Okay, so, you know, it's up to the homeowner. I don't think we should need to be spending money to try to fix a major problem when the homeowner, if he has 4 cars and he's taking up half the block, or, you know, 3 houses or whatever, he should look at putting a parking spot behind his house if he can afford it.
Howard, you just brought up a real interesting question, and let me give you a little, let me tell you a little bit about it. Since the borough went with 2 parking spaces per rental unit, there may have only been, I don't even know if there was 10 apartments created in that period of time. There are an awful lot of our rental property, apartments, and single-family rentals that fell into the grandfather clause prior to that ordinance being enacted. And there's a lot of parking in the street, on the streets, by rental properties, by folks living in rental properties. I'm not beating up on rental people, but there's a lot of parking being taken up there because they fell into the grandfather clause and didn't have to create parking areas for their tenants. I don't know if you can go back and do something, which you can, but that's an issue. And I'll bet you, if you've been into some of these congested areas, you'll see that that's your problem. There's no doubt in my mind that's your problem. If you got for example, if it was grandfather and you got a 3, 4, 5 unit, you got a problem in that block. Just one. You're not going to get out. You got a problem in that block. So,
Mayor, you're right. I've done a lot of work on apartment houses in Columbia, and some of them had parking behind their apartments. But I can tell you right now, I know one has 8 units down on Union Street, and you can't tell me that there's 8 cars can fit in front of this apartment.
yep, I know exactly what you're talking about, Howard. You're right. That's a big issue. That's one that, I don't know the answer to it, but that's an issue.
And I mean, the reality is, it comes down to respect and everything else. I mean, if you have a home where you have, 4 cars and it's a small street, you should, do the honorable thing and realize that, you can't always get all 4 of your cars right there at your house. It's not respectful to your neighbors. But the reality is, we can't legislate morality here. You can't, so.
Well, if you're around town, you'll see residents, they play parking hopscotch.
Yeah.
Someone pulls out, they run out of the house and move their car.
Mhm.
This is all the time.
I do like Todd's plan, create zones, work with a contractor. This gives everybody in the community, every taxpayer, the opportunity to create their own parking spots, extra
Yep.
parking spots.
Yeah.
I would like to, in with that, I would like to say that, if they are participating in the program with us, we would waive the permit fee for that also.
Well, I don't think that's to be discussed, I'm just saying.
I think that would be a good part of it
allows
too.
every resident an
Mhm.
opportunity.
Well, when you contract with a business to do that, it would be,
Maybe one main term to do all of them, so.
Right.
And maybe, I'm always a big fan of, anytime there's a benefit to you personally, you have some skin in the game, so to speak. So if we cut the permit cost way down for you, and you're paying just a small bit, and you're paying a portion of the prorated part, or the benefit of the economy of scale, I think that's fair. I don't think, we gotta be careful, we as government, giving too much benefit to one individual, but I think we can do it for the good of the whole. And that's why I like this program. I think we can put something together that's gonna be really effective.
And I would check with RACP, maybe we could follow that money and allow the residents to pay half and the RACP pay half.
That's something that we can creatively look at in that. And you know what, if this is something that's really working for us, we can go after another grant. We have $3 million sitting there as a line item. Half of it's uncommitted. If this is working for us, let's get the legislation to work with us and see if we can commit more of that line item money to this program. Because we know that parking is a big deal. The other thing, and Eric, I'm really on your side, I tend to agree with you. We have the issue on South 4th right now where we let a business designate a couple parking spaces, and we may have to relook at that and how we're going to do it. In my mindset, when you're looking at residential property that's a rental is a business property. That's a business happening there. So I think we have to be careful allowing businesses to take spaces, because we can't define a residential rental different than a shop. It's all a business down there, and I don't think it's fair to say if you're owner occupied versus rental, you should get that special treatment as to where you park. So I think that, it's great. I agree with the mayor. This is all brainstorming. When I really start thinking through it, I think we got to be careful crossing that line of using public space for private benefit. And that's a tough line. I think these are good ideas. I've been in places where there's permit parking. My oldest daughter lives in Philly. She can't get a permit parking spot now because her address is still Lancaster, but she lives there, so she parks out. Sometimes she has to walk 4 or 5 blocks. If you live in the city, that's just the reality of what you do. You hope you get as close as you can when you park in there. But I think and to attract businesses here to this community, we have to look at how we can create more parking so we can make our downtown successful. And I think that's where, looking at some of this money, this piece here, Mayor, I think that's a good idea. Let's look up off the alley here and see how we do that. We have an underutilized lot somewhat that it looks in front that hasn't fully been, filled up on a regular basis right now. And maybe we can look at a public-private partnership and putting in some expanded surface parking in a couple of these areas that work, as structures need to be redeveloped, we'll look at adding some parking there to get more and more cars off the street, and start looking at these policies and rules in our land development regulations to try to encourage the better use of rear parking. It's becoming economic, like we see in like the Myers project and some other ones where you elevate the building and you put some of your parking underneath the first floor. That's very, very common now in construction throughout the U.S. So these creative solutions, I think, is where we're going to go. I think these are going to work, and we've got to piece by piece look at it.
One of the partnership opportunities that I don't want to get lost because I think it could be very valuable because of the location is with the burning bridge. And maybe it's, okay, we're going to use some of our RACP money to repave, and in exchange for that, to back X number of spaces, or even in that small where the building was that collapsed, that's filled in, it's just stone now. If we can pave that also, and, we'll pave your lot, but then we'd like you to allow us X number of spaces for public parking.
These 2 hotels over here are probably going to have some kind of conversation as well, with the burning bridge. What's happening over there? But I'm sure something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Some kind of discussion of parties.
Okay.
Maybe that's a 3-party conversation to have.
Yeah.
We're doing that now. We're trying to get that.
And the other thing is.
Can I say something?
Oh, yep.
I don't know if you noticed, but they found their parking lot down to the alleyway and put cones up so nobody could get into the alleyway. They brought that alleyway.
What alley?
Which alley, Howard?
It's one coming up from Stover's up to the bank, the 2 banks.
Okay.
I didn't see that.
Who blocked it?
They probably shut and then they put cones up so you couldn't get through.
You mean they blocked the exit to their parking lot?
To the alleyway.
Yeah.
Oh, so the alley's not blocked.
They did on their parking.
Okay. The alley's not blocked. Okay.
People cut across there.
Yeah.
People would cut across.
No,
They cut across.
the alleyway wasn't blocked. It was getting to the alleyway. You couldn't get to the alley.
Yeah.
I just had a question. It has really nothing to do with us especially, but I know Mannheim, when I went through there, and I tried to ask you that the other day and we got sidetracked, but Mannheim Borough does not have any meters at all, and they seem to have just ample parking. When I drove through there, I kept looking and looking, there was just no meters. How do they do that?
So we looked at, when I was there, to put meters on the square, but there really wasn't a problem. What most people don't see is there's a lot of parking back behind the building. That's shared parking. The borough has a large lot on the north side of the square back there that holds a lot of vehicles. So it's one of those that the locals know and the residents around the area know. There's some signs if you see them. But really well. But there were other areas of the borough we started looking at that we needed parking down on Stiegel where we put in the booking house. It was an event space. The old building there was 90% of the lot, so we had to get creative, and they negotiated, and I helped just kind of mediate it. They negotiated parking down the street with an industrial light that was underutilized, and they got a lease agreement with the industrial light down the street. So when they held their events, they would turn the lights on and created a pathway right up. And in an urban setting that's built out, that's the kind of creativity you do. You work together, and that's why I kind of like to bring bridge ideas. If that's an underutilized lot that we could help partner with, and we could do something with them. And I think the 10-year, 20-year plan might be at some point to look at a parking structure downtown if we are successful in revitalizing downtown and getting it energized and we have a higher demand. But not to sound too Jetsons, but maybe at that point parking becomes less of an issue because less people start owning cars and more people are traveling through automated vehicle movements, and you have less cars. We don't know. This is probably the hardest time in history to project out. But I think you're right. I think that's a great way to look at it is how we do our parking. Now, I'm a fan of meter parking in our downtowns. That famous study that talked about the high cost of free parking, you get less turnover and your businesses suffer when you don't have time limits, either time limits or meter parking downtown. And to be honest, our parking rates are fairly inexpensive. To park downtown for an hour costs you a couple quarters and you're in. So it's not a big drain on the economy to do that. But again, Mannheim, going back to your question, Mannheim looked at that and we talked about putting meters in, but at that point it wasn't a need. We didn't have the parking prices there.
It just looked nice without the meters and things, and it didn't look congested at all, so I was just curious to know. Thank you.
That square is unique.
Well,
it's
yes,
a really neat space, and working hard to try to get some other shops in there to energize that even more.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I say something?
You got to ask the president.
Here,
Yeah, Howard.
Louis.
Yeah, Howard.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. The reason why I brought up that how the park lot shut to the alleyway, you would appreciate this. If fire or ambulance or anybody would try to get in there, they couldn't have gone in there.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I brought that up.
Sure.
Well, and like I said, Howard, they probably didn't know where to go with the snow, but the other thing is, they have a problem with people coming off Walnut Street and going through their lot and parking and going into the bank, drive-through. So that's a safety issue that they have.
It doesn't give them the right to block it. They could have plowed it over to that empty lot where it's going to go down the old
They
road.
could have, yeah, they could have.
It's no excuse.
But they may also be pushing a conversation with us by doing that.
Yep. Passive aggressive. Mark, there are two small areas that I would like us to keep in mind when we talk about creating new parking spaces. We had the gentleman come in to Harb to get permission on 4th Street at the old firehouse to take out that garage door and put in man doors. I want us to keep that in mind, that we get rid of that curb cut and see how many spaces we can get in there. Because that block definitely needs them.
That building you're talking about, Heather, though, we can't really do that yet, can we? Because did that go to zoning for any kind of use, for change of use of that?
So that's the next step we're looking at now. They wanted to know if they could make the physical changes to their buildings. The zoning has it, Tarantino has it now. Looking at what next processes need to go through.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure we keep it on our radar that is an opportunity. And the second place that I noticed is right up the street here at the old bank building. I think when that was the bank, there was the drive-through, so the whole front of the building is painted yellow.
Yeah.
If they're not using that as a drive-through, are we able to get rid of that no parking area? We can probably fit 2 more spaces in there, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that
one
is
that-
2 spaces. I think we pulled 2 meters there.
Yeah, that's
You're
a
absolutely
no
right.
parking anytime. I mean, we could put 2 more spaces there, and that's,
Right away.
I mean, spaces are spaces, you know, I mean,
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
thinking like, we could get 3 in front of the old firehouse and 2 here, that's 5 in that one block,
That's a good catch.
that's huge. You know, so, I mean, maybe I haven't been all around, but who knows if there's more places like that around town that, you know, we've just not really looked at, because, you know, I mean, you fall into that, it's been like that forever, what, you know, you don't even think twice about it.
So on that note, one of the pieces, and Heather, you and I and Mayor have talked about this a little bit, and that is, on the flip side, not to take away parking per se, but to ensure safety and sight distance at intersections, and to make sure that there is clear sight distance at our intersections, key intersections, so that people can see. And we talked about, you know, making sure we go back and maybe a summer program, maybe like we had the students coming in down at the crossings, maybe get students come in and help us, you know, repaint the separation. And Evan and I were looking at those tonight a little bit. Safety distance around a fire hydrant, safety distance from an intersection or a crosswalk, and make sure those are clear too, because on top of, and this is my planning nerd side come out, on top of ensuring the safety of our vehicles, if you will, I put as a higher priority the safety of our residents as a whole, and what makes towns like this very attractive is you can park once and walk, or you bike in. And one of our big goals is to pull as many of the people from the river trail up into town, and they will do that. Having been one of those crazy cyclists who ride your bike everywhere for years, we love just taking our bike, taking it somewhere, parking it, locking it, hopping on again, and going down to the next spot. And to encourage people to park once maybe and either unlock their bikes or walk with their family, and to create that safe walking environment throughout town as well, I think is equally as important. So we looked at creative crosswalks and some other ideas that's going to make the downtown very walkable, bikeable, and I think that's going to be an added benefit for us, is to keep that in mind. I say these words, and I'm not a big fan of labels, but that complete streets model of making sure that you're moving the goods where you need to, but the walkability, the bikeability, the drivability of your downtown core has to be protected for all modes. I think that's going to be a big goal for us also in the next 5 to 10 years, is to improve that walkability. People will walk. You go to some of these bigger cities, you go down to DC, and you don't think, man, I'm going to drive all over DC to get around. Nobody thinks that way. You think about how I'm going to get around and where can I park once and walk as many places as possible. And then you can beat Fran in the step competition that week, you know. So I think more and more of our people will want to do that, you know.
Mark, Borough used to hire two high school graduates that were going off to college or trade school every year.
Mm-hmm.
And they would paint the yellow lines, the red lines, whatever have you, around town. And now, with the Chesapeake Bay becoming a front and center issue, we have all our storm drains marked, and they need touched up from time to time. That's something, you know, it was a couple $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, you know, $1 isn't, we shouldn't be looking at, but that was a couple $1,000 that had a big benefit versus paying someone who's making a lot more money to come in and do that work. And you help out that student buy books or whatever to get off of school. That's a big thing. And the other thing is, Mark, you made me think about something that I thought about for a long time. We don't have any bike racks out in front of the borough.
Yeah, I've thought of that, and we actually looked at now. One of the parking plans we talked about is for the market house, which is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a brief update on how we've created some more spaces now, but we need bike racks outside of the market, and I'd rather see them full. But one of the big changes we're making right now is asking the code vehicles to park down at the streets building. So when the code guys come in the morning, they get their assignments to do their work, and they can park right out here, along Third, because we have it designated during work hours for code vehicles. They can come in and get all their assignments, go down, pick up their code trucks, and then drive them all day, pull up again in front here when they come in and out to do the work, and then at night go down, they take their code vehicles back down there, their personal vehicles there, and they leave for the day. So that's a change we already put in, and talking about the 1 or 2 spaces, we just created 8 spaces then in the employee parking lot that we can start shifting some of the other employees parking over there, look at how we do police parking, and utilize that space better for us so that on Wednesdays when we are at work, we're ensuring a good number of places for the people to come into the market, for the market to be successful. We in town, or we work here, we'll get there. We know how to get to the market. That's easy. That's good money, but the money we want to bring in your economic model is you want the outside the area money coming into town. We want people from York and around, and we want people at Spooky Nook Sports and people coming into Strasburg and coming into Lancaster City for a conference or something to come out and come see our market. And they don't want to have to look for parking. They're the ones who don't know the town. They're a little less comfortable getting around, so they're going to find the most convenient. Unless you're the younger generation and they just don't care. They'll park, they'll walk, they love it. They have a different mindset. But to get those people comfortable here, we have to look at parking for the market. So that's going to be a big part of the RAPT funds is really redo the site plan for this campus here, if you will, and ensure the most adequate parking as well as the most active space that we can use for that.
In our wayfinding thing, we're talking about signage and wayfinding.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to make sure that we include not just the parking signage and how to find places to park, but I'm also thinking about some of those ones like they have in Lancaster City on the sidewalk that, with an immediate area, and here's where this is, here's for the people that are walking or on the bike, to be able to find like, the different things. I would like to include some of those as well.
Absolutely, and
Because I think that's important.
That's the big part of the wayfinding program. It's again based on 2 scales. You have the vehicle scale of coming in saying these are the general areas to walk in. And then you have the pedestrian scale sign to say, in the next block, or we talked about for within a 5-minute walk, these shops are within your 5-minute walk. Mm-hmm. Then each business pays for their placard. When a storefront changes out, they pay a fee, and it's going to be $25 to have a new sign made up, and we go out and we put a new sign on there, and that's cheap advertising for them as a business to get them in there. So those signs, but again, they only work if we are committed to maintaining them. Mm-hmm. When they get out of date and they're old, and there's still a sign on the wayfinding that the shop's been gone for 2 years, then we'll fall behind. So we have to commit to do these things, and we have to look at the cost, but the benefit done well will outweigh the cost of doing these programs. And I that to me is a big piece of what we need to do, is get people to know where to go and where to park.
And I mean, even if we don't necessarily on the signs, if we don't commit to the shop piece, we can at least put our historical things on there that, over here is the Wright Mansion, over here is the Watching Clock Museum, here, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk at all about diagonal parking? If that would accomplish anything, maybe in a space or 2 every block?
I think you lose.
We looked at that, and Derek did just the one block on South 4th, and we actually lost a couple spaces because you have to give up parking on one side because the cars stick out farther. So you end up, and in my mind too, we just doubled our parking, but in reality you don't.
I mean, some of our blocks, like if you did it out on like Central Avenue where it's, you know, the road's a mile wide, you could do it there, but on both sides, but most of them are downtown streets.
You know, where,
Hey, Mark, I just watched the video.
oh, I just turned our camera off, that's all. Do you want it on again? You can see him? I was gonna do stuff.
What do you mean?
I
He's not on
but he can see it.
oh, is he seeing the camera? I didn't realize. Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, is there anything we wanted to, oh, I remembered what I wanted to say when we were talking about the snow emergency, and you were talking about skinnying it down to different areas.
Yes.
I would think that we would want to continue to include 3rd Street on there, if for no other reason than the fact that if there is a medical emergency or our, you know, fire apparatus is going somewhere, we would need 3rd Street for them to access Route 30.
I agree 100%.
So I think we should continue to include 3rd Street in there, if for no other reason than ensuring a safe route to 30 to get out.
Well, it was quite evident today, Heather, you're absolutely right, I agree with you 100%. The guy ran the snow blower from Cedar to Locust today, because, for that reason, we go over that corridor, yes. And we, like I said, we kind of got away from it when it wasn't a state highway.
Right.
But it's a major route now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
so,
absolutely right.
yeah, so I would like to see 3rd continue to be included in that snow emergency area.
Yeah, and we'll look at that, and the other one I want to bring up just quickly is Evan and I want to look at our parking ordinance as a whole, to make sure that everything that we have there and all the regulations are enforceable with our police. So that's one that we'll work on and bring forward probably this summer as a recommendation of some of the other ones, just to get these cleaned up immediately.
All right, does anyone else have anything they would like to add or discuss related to the parking? My only question at this point is next steps. When do we want to revisit this with the discussion on the meter replacement?
Well, I think all of this needs to bring forward sooner than later, so we can start getting some details down. And I know that the chief did have some numbers ready for us for tonight, so I think that in the next meeting or two, we'll schedule, or maybe even our next workshop, we can wrap this up and get it in, so we can start getting these pieces together for action items for you guys to bring forward everything.
Yeah, let's plan then for the March work session to revisit this with some more concrete plans, because April work session is going to be the combined meeting with the school district, correct? The school board.
We're still waiting for confirmation from the superintendent. Everything was starting to go good, and suddenly we had a snow to deal with, so.
Yeah.
I'll get back with her, and we'll try to get that locked down, but it seems like that's a good date for everybody.
We're gonna look at that handicap ordinance as well.
And that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get that one cleaned up as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kevin and I talked about trying to save some money on advertising costs. We're trying to bundle any related topics together and get them advertised together so that we can save a little bit. So
But if the if the parking ordinance is going to take a long time, we might want to just.
I think, yeah, that should be a real, I mean, it would, obviously, if you did a separate ordinance, that costs a little bit more than if you did them all combined, but I think that's a relatively quick and easy one that we can fix now, and that should not be terrible, but, because we can just pull the language really, I think, probably right out of the statute. And there's a section in your code now that we can just kind of replace, and it will be, it will be sufficient for what we need to do.
Yeah, I don't mind spending extra on that one. Because it's not like something that we're just cleaning up. That's an actual change we want to make and get in place soon for.
Exactly. And that's not a problem that's gonna go away.
Exactly.
That keeps coming up, I can tell you, so.
Exactly.
And we'll have the South 4th Street one as soon as I can get the CHI, and Evan and I can talk with them, we'll bring that one forward as well.
Well, really, we shouldn't have to do anything there because we've not done anything to remove those spaces, have we?
Well, just because it took place at a public meeting, I think if somebody looking back wonders where they went, I think it's cleaner to have their record clean and just remove it by an action by the board.
Okay.
But I think it's due respect to CHI to let them know that this is coming and work with them to get a plan to work with that.
But we should not have to advertise anything, because no ordinance was changed.
Right.
in that. So it's just something that we'll have to.
It's just an action, and it would be on the agenda, what I'm going to say.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right. All right, upcoming meetings. The Land Bank Advisory Committee that was scheduled for tomorrow has been canceled. And there is a civil service meeting on the 9th, which is next Tuesday. Borough Council comments, we'll do a round table. Start on the phone, Councilperson Stevens, anything?
Yes, thank you, Heather. I have one or two things. Number one, being on go-to meeting, the audio is fantastic. I can understand and hear everybody very clearly. On Facebook, it's still terrible. It's got a big echo. The bass is too low. You can't understand anything. I'm looking at two computers and trying to listen to both of them. And the other thing was comments from several meetings ago was the screen. When the Columbia Crossings had their presentation, there was people wanting to see it on the screen, and you can't see it. So that was talked about being moved, and the audio for the last 6-7 months has been talked about being fixed, and it's not. We paid a lot of money for this. The taxpayers should be granted what we can see or hear. If any way go-to meetings could be moved to Facebook or something, because I'll tell you right now, I can hear everybody very clearly. And I contacted 2 people, listened to the meeting tonight, and they thought it was fantastic.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Howard. We have a call into the audio now to get them in here to look at that. They're just backed up now, so we'll try to get back in.
Thank you.
Yep, good comment. Thank you.
All right, anything else, Howard? All right, Councilperson Littner?
No.
No? Councilperson Kaufman?
I just reiterate, thank you to the road crew. I was impressed with how clean they got everything already. I remember years ago, and I'm not blaming anybody, just, it took a lot longer. And with that, I guess that's it.
All right. Councilperson Fitzgerald?
No, thank you.
Councilperson Brooker? All right, I do have one thing I wanted to announce, that after the last meeting, and we signed all those documents for the bond refinancing and everything, the next day we got an email from the company that's doing it, and I would just like to announce that our total savings, after it's all been locked in, is $1,251,257. So it is even more than we thought the savings was going to be. So that, it was huge. They're like, the emails, the guy's like, oh my gosh, that, you know, in all the years I've done this is the biggest deal I've ever seen, and so we're doing really good.
Yeah, very good.
And something else, I forgot to mention this at the last meeting, but I just wanted to say, one thing I noticed when I looked at the financial reports from December, and I checked with Mark and Kyle just to make sure I was understanding. I'm not sure if anyone else picked up on this or not when they looked at those financial reports. But it looks like we're coming out of 2020 without taking any of the money out of the reserve that we had said we were going to. So there was a lot of discussion at the beginning of the year about trying to not spending from reserves and everything else, and we were successful in doing that. So I think, you know, the official word will be when we see it all from the auditor and stuff, and as we finish closing out 2020. But I just wanted to mention that we did what we set out to do, and that was not spend from reserves.
And that's with a caution, and I'll put with a caveat. We didn't do some projects, and we had some personnel savings in that time frame. But to make it sustainable, we do have to look at improving the tax value of our properties here, because it won't last unless we keep going and keep taking active steps to do this. So getting redevelopment downtown, getting our storefronts built, getting underutilized properties rebuilt, I think is the plan we have to stay with and stay focused on to make this sustainable. But yes, it was a huge effort when Kyle and I finished running the numbers and sat down and looked at them. We were shocked that we had done as well as we did. So kudos to you all for looking at the policies and the changes that were made to make this happen. And to Kyle, you know, he's still technically with us this week. I'll say he worked hard to get those numbers down.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if anyone noticed that or not, but I wanted to make it a point to mention that we did end up really good. And yes, I know, Mark, it was because there were some things that, you know, some savings due to staffing and things like that. But
Bottom line is we did it.
The bottom line is we did it, and you know, kudos to everyone for pushing to keep looking at that. Anyway, all right. At 6:30 p.m. on February 9th, Council will hold an information session to receive information only items from its borough manager and solicitor prior to the regularly scheduled meeting at 7 p.m. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please? I have a motion by Councilperson Kaufman, and a second by Councilperson Brigard to adjourn the meeting at 8:43 p.m. All in favor? Aye. And that's a wrap. We're adjourned.
Are we all fine?